I'm Steve Franklin. I work at North Point Ministries of the Andy Stanley and team. I don't have a title, but if I had a title, it'd be something like stewardship pastor, because I work with people who are in that sort of stable to surplus stage of life, helping them figure out how they can best deploy all of the financial resources and others, influence, talent, to the maximum capacity to impact the kingdom. Well, I heard about Purpose on Tap from my good friends Tucker Yates and Clayton Edwards, who I've gotten to know through the years. And I came to one of the early ones a couple of years ago when Jeff Foxworthy came here. I mean, who doesn't want to come here, Jeff Foxworthy? And so I came, it was great. And then several times since then, I have talked to Tucker and Clayton about what you all do here and how often you do it. One of the things I'm going to just briefly mention tonight is Jesus is Savior and Jesus is Lord. And I think a lot of people have Jesus as Savior, but they don't have Jesus as the Lord of their life. And I think that for a man, a lot of people might get saved, but then the whole issue is then what are you going to turn over to Jesus to really make your life abundant and rich and full and impactful and have meaning and purpose. I've just got a story that I'm going to tell tonight, and I'm going to share some nuggets of wisdom that I picked up along the way just from my life, what happened in my life, and then also from these wonderful centenarians that I have interviewed over the last decade or so. Wrote a book called Celebrate 100. And I guess maybe they want me to sort of weave some of those in and out in terms of what are nuggets of wisdom that young men, old men, we're all young and old, can learn to live a more fulfilling, abundant, impactful life. I think everybody really wants that, whether they feel it or not or can articulate it that way, but we all want to have meaning at the end of our lives. And so the way you have meaning at the end of your lives is have meaning during your life. So we're all a composite of three things in life: the books we read, the people we meet, and the places we go. And we should do as much of all three as we possibly can to be as filled up as we can be, to be as impactful as we can be. That's one thing I want them to hear. And the other thing I want them to hear is that you need to be intentional about turning your life over to the Lordship of Christ rather than just thinking it might happen. Appreciate it. Can you guys hear me okay? Great, great, great. Well, I am honored to be here because I know some of the people that have been here. And wow, they are fabulous people. And I know some of them personally. And my first time here was when Jeff Foxworthy came. I mean, who doesn't want to come see and hear Jeff Foxworthy, right? So it was great. So I'm honored to be here. A number of you guys can relate to me tonight because I am serious ADD. Any of you relate to me? Show of hands. Okay, yeah, it's ADD. I'm also a middle child, but my older brother is 4 years older. My younger brother was 6 years younger. And so if you've read birth order, I mean, I'm still sort of a only child. But I got some of those characteristics. I'm a flaming extrovert, and so I just love all these new friends I've met tonight. Some of you are old friends, some of you are new friends, so it's great. So if I had a title for my talk tonight, it'd be An ADD's Journey to Jesus. An ADD's Journey to Jesus. So, I can stay focused. Ooh, there's a squirrel, but not for long. But I have to really work hard to stay on purpose, And so somebody once said, God takes care of fools and children. And I fit in both categories. So I'm just delighted to be here tonight. So Tucker and Clayton asked me if I would just sort of share my story, share a few nuggets of wisdom that I've picked up along the way. I did write a book a few years ago. I spent about 7 or 8 years as I was traveling around the country with financial services. I'll get into that in a minute. And I got to interview and videotape over 200 centenarians, people over 100 years old. And then we got surveys from about another 350 of them. So I got about input from about 550 people who lived over 100 years. Oldest woman was 116, oldest man 114. So I met a lot of people from 100 to 116. And a lot of wisdom there, and I'll share some of that wisdom with you tonight. But I was born in Augusta, Georgia, so I'm a Georgian by birth. Yes, sir. My dad was in medical school there, and I lived there until I was 3, moved down to Florida, and then I moved to Jacksonville, Florida. So I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida on the St. Johns River, if you've ever been there. And I lived the absolute wonderful life of the 50s. I see some of you guys that are close to my age, okay? And so the 50s, was that just Wally's World, fabulous 50s. Everything was going great post-World War II. And I lived on this 13 acres on the St. Johns River. It was just great. My dad was a country doctor. And it was just going beautifully until one night I was awakened by the screams of my mom. My mom was just screaming out loud, blood curdling, and I ran into the kitchen. And unbeknownst to me, my father had become addicted to prescription drugs. And he was having what is known as a blackout. He never even remembered it till the day he died. He was having a blackout, and what he was doing in that rage, he was beating my mother to death with a black skillet, a black iron skillet. And I mean, there was blood everywhere. Her nose was broken. Her head was crushed. I mean, I went crazy. I mean, I just kind of went nuts, and I tried to pull him off, and I couldn't. I was too small. I was 12 years old. And so I ran upstairs screaming to my older brother, Ben, who was 16 and fortunately been pumping iron, playing football. And he came down, and he had to punch my father into unconsciousness. Literally knock him into unconsciousness to keep my father from beating my mother to death. I remember it was kind of a blur, but my younger brother, he doesn't remember anything. He was 6 years younger. I got him in the car. I got mother all wrapped up in a towel, got her in the car, ran back in the house to get Ben, and my brother was holding a gun on my dad, a shotgun. And I remember him saying to my dad as he was kind of coming to, he said, "Dad, if you move, I'm going to blow your brains out." And we ran and jumped in the car and took off. And so it was a hell of a night. And hate was introduced to me that night. Because guys, I don't know where you all are with your dads. I guess we got a lot of different stories here tonight. But I fell in hate with my dad because I was too young and immature to understand that he had not done it on purpose. I thought he had done it on purpose. I thought he was purposely trying to kill my mom. And so I hated my dad. In fact, I used to try to figure out how to kill my dad because he had tried to kill my mom without getting caught. Because I had seen enough TV back then, it was all black and white, but I'd seen enough to know I did not want to go to jail. I did know that. But I used to literally lay in bed at night and figure out, because he ended up moving back to Metter, Georgia. Get to that story in a little bit. And I tried to figure out how could I get to Metter at night, kill him, get back to Jacksonville, go to school without getting caught, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. So that's an important part of the story, is that's where I really started to hate my own father because I saw this event in my life that I thought was all on purpose, but he never even remembered it because he was in literally a drugified rage. So in the fall of 1959, I go into DuPont High School. Back then it was 7 to 12. And I'm the only guy that I know that has divorced parents. When I graduated from high school in 65, out of 350 of us who graduated, only 2 of us had divorced parents. Hard to believe now, isn't it? So I went from being the big man on campus. I was really the tallest kid in the 6th grade. Can you believe that? And then I quit growing over the summer, and somehow everybody else kept growing over the summer. And I went from big man on campus, and I really went into the 7th grade with, I was ashamed. My self-confidence and self-esteem was just terrible. I started making terrible grades in school, B's, C's, D's, and F's. It was awful. And I don't even remember much about my 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grades at all. But in the 11th grade, I fell in lust with Donna Holslander. She was one good-looking cheerleader. And so she invited me to go to this thing called Young Life. I'd never heard of Young Life. And I didn't care what it was because as long as I was going with her, it was fine. And to be honest with you, that whole year I went to Young Life. A guy named Charlie Scott was the leader. I didn't really remember any of the messages. I just was stuck on Donna. But he asked me if I'd like to go to this camp out in Colorado. Well, I'd never been out of Georgia or Florida. I came up to Georgia to see my grandparents. But I didn't see my dad for 6 years after that night. I saw him the next day, and then I didn't see him for 6 years, and I hated him for those 6 years. And I wanted to kill him for those 6 years, but I couldn't figure out how. So I go to Young Life, and then this guy invites me to go to this camp. So how many of you guys have ever been to Young Life Camp, Frontier Ranch? Anybody here? A few of you have been to Frontier Ranch out west? Yeah, really cool place, so you know what I'm talking about. And so I remember I got there and didn't remember much about the first 3 nights, but the 4th night, this guy named Bill Starr was speaking. And I'll never forget he said this. He said, you know, most people think that being born in America makes you a Christian. Now, this is 1964.
A lot of you guys weren't even born then. Most of you weren't born then. And I remember thinking, well, yeah, that's right. You know, unless you're a Jew, you're a Christian. I mean, everybody in America is born a Christian. And he said, look, being born in America no more makes you a Christian than being born in a garage makes you a car. And I remember going, what the hell is he talking about? I remember thinking that. He said, most people in the world are 12 to 14 inches from becoming a Christian. He said, it's the distance from your head to your heart. He said, most people intellectually believe there's a God. Most people even intellectually believe there's Jesus. But most people have not made the personal journey from the head to the heart. And we can have a personal relationship with Him. And I had never heard that in my early upbringing as a Methodist and an Episcopalian. Never heard that in my entire life. And he said, and we can know Him personally. All you got to do is ask Him, start following. And I remember that night in the cabin, I just said something like, you know, Jesus, if you're really there and you're really real and you're really still alive, and what Bill said is true, I really would like to have a personal relationship with you. I'm not even sure I know what that means, but that would be cool. And I fell asleep. And all I can tell you guys is this. Have you ever been asked, hey, how do you know you became a Christian, or when did you become a Christian? The next morning when I woke up, I got up very early before all the other guys in the cabin, and I went up above the swimming pool. Those of you guys who have been there, I went up above that swimming pool. There's a ledge up there that overlooks that valley where the camp is. And I can remember that all of the hatred for my dad was gone. I mean, gone. Not only was the hatred gone, I had this incredible desire to want to see my dad and to ask him to forgive me for hating him so and wanting to kill him. But I was too young and immature to know how to do that. So I got back to DuPont High School, graduated in '65, went to the University of Florida, and fortunately, as a freshman, a guy who had just finished the University of Georgia came down there to go to law school at the University of Florida, and he was a strong believer, and he knew one of my buddies from the other side of town and gathered us all together and started creating a small group of community of 4 or 5 of us, and he would just mentor us, and he'd take us to some church sometimes on Sunday morning. Sometimes we wouldn't go to church, we'd just study, and we'd go to this place for 99 cents. You could get a half pound of ground round and french fries. His name was Andrew Crenshaw, and Bobby Tebow, Timmy Tebow's dad, was one of the guys in that small group. I mean, he's just a great guy. So I had this wonderful mentoring early in my faith. Older brother coming in there, spending time pouring into us when he had law school to deal with, but once a week pouring into us, trying to help us grow in our faith. About the middle of my junior year, I thought I wanted to go into full-time ministry, and I was dating this girl whose parents encouraged me to go out to Abilene Christian College, now Abilene Christian University. And so I went out there and I became a Bible major, Bible theology major with a business minor. And I met my lovely wife Elaine there, and we got married in July of 1969. We just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary a couple of months ago, right? We did a 44-day around-the-world trip. We went around the world in 44 days on Delta. Man, it was great. Moved back to Atlanta and thought I wanted to go to seminary. In fact, I got accepted to Columbia Theological Seminary. But they told me the first 6 weeks I had to study Greek. Well, man, I just got married. I was going to have to study Greek. I said, no way. And so long story short, I decided to go to Georgia State. I got an MBA at Georgia State, finished all the work for a PhD, and then decided to start my own business. I said, I can always finish my PhD, and I'd read this book that said, advertising is the most fun business you can have with your clothes on. So I thought it'd be kind of cool. So I started an advertising public relations agency. And I did that for 2 or 3 years, but I got a couple of 3 clients that were real estate developers, like a lot of you guys in here are real estate developers. And they were making 10 times what I was making. I said, man, I got to get in the real estate business, because I was driven by money at that time. I wanted to make a lot of money, because I'd been rich and I'd been poor. When my dad was at home and whatever, we were great. Then when he left and we're divorced, I mean, from the 7th grade on, man, I started selling door-to-door everything. White rose salve, I sold burpee seeds, I sold everything, because I just needed money because we had no money. So got in the real estate development business. 1974. I don't know how many of you guys were around here in 74 that can remember, but we had a mild recession in 1974. Nothing like 2008 and 9. But I went broke. In April 1975, right when my son Stephen was being born, I went broke. I mean, dead broke. I called my granddaddy Papa, and I said, Papa, you told me that if I was never broke at least once in my life, I would never amount to anything. And I want you to know something, Papa, I am going to amount to something because I am broke. I want you guys to picture this. I'm living over there in kind of north, over there near Cumberland Mall. I'm living in a 6-bedroom house, 4.5 baths. I got 2 cars and a pickup truck that my granddaddy sold me for $6. I am living large. I'm a real estate developer. We shut the business down on Friday afternoon. My son's being born in 2 weeks. On Monday morning, I am downtown Fulton County in the unemployment office with all my several hundred brothers and sisters collecting our $115 unemployment check to pay the utilities. Now that will take the red off your candy. It'll take the chrome off your bumper. It'll make you humble. I said, God, I have got this. I have got an A+ in humility. I do not want to go through this again. I do not want to be broke again. So rather than finish up my PhD at Georgia State, I decided I had a great opportunity. The University of Oklahoma contacted me and said, we'll give you a full ride. So I went out to the University of Oklahoma, spent 3 years, got another master's degree, got a PhD in management and organizational behavior, and I didn't know that I'd ever come back to Atlanta. But Emory University called me and said, hey, we'd love you to come back, teach entrepreneurship and new venture management. Came right back to Atlanta, Georgia, moved right over there near Emory University, and just started back at Emory and just had a great time. I loved it. I'd been teaching 3 years at a small Oklahoma Christian college, small liberal arts college while I was getting my PhD. Then I taught for 6 years at Emory. In 4 years, I got tenured. I wrote a couple of textbooks. I wrote 40 or 50 articles. I had to publish so I would not perish. That's the phrase in academics, as some of you may know. So got tenured, which means lifetime employment. When you're endowed by the Coca-Cola Company, you got lifetime employment. You get tenured at Emory University. But what did I tell you I got a bad case of? I got ADD. And so for my sabbatical, every 6 years you could take a year off, and they pay you to go do anything you want to do. You go fishing, you just do anything you want. So I went to work for this company called Financial Service Corporation because a friend of mine, Roy Ludwig, said, why don't you come just check this out, see you can learn something, go back. I didn't even know what an independent broker-dealer was. I go there, they start giving me a bunch of stock, we start growing this thing. At the end of the year, I got all this stock, we're growing the company. They say, hey, we're going to take this thing public. Well, one of my bucket lists was I wanted to always take a company public, be president of a public company. So I go to President Lane. He said, President Lane, will you give me one more year before I give up tenure? I don't want to give up tenure. I worked so hard for it. He said, okay, fine. So at the end of the second year, I had more stock, and the company had grown to the second largest independent broker-dealer in the country. And so I'm thinking, this is my chance. We're going to take this thing public. So I gave up tenure. I walked away from Emory after all that work. My wife thought I was crazy. My friends thought I was crazy. I probably thought a little bit. I thought I was crazy, but this was the opportunity. This was on my bucket list. I want to take a company public, be the president of it. And what happened was the Mutual New York Life Insurance Company came along and bought us before we took it public. And they paid us a ridiculous amount of money for the company. And 2 years into the 5-year earnout, they walked into the office and they fired me, the president, CFO, Roy Ludwig, fired all the senior managers, typical, and brought their own people in. And literally this guy walked into, this New York lawyer, I'll never forget. He walked into my office and said, Mr. Franklin, he said, we know we owe you the money for 3 more years, but you're going to have to sue us to get it. He literally said that. Wish I'd had an iPhone, recording it. It would have been easier. Because I spent 20 months in a lawsuit, and on the Friday afternoon before we went to court on Monday, which we knew we were going to win, they knew we were going to win, they settled for 80 cents on the dollar. That's just the game they play. It's the dark side of business. I got my second PhD in business doing that. And so I said, great. Well, during that time, while the lawsuits were going on, I worked for a company called Ron Blue & Company. Some of you know of the Ron Blue & Company. It's now called the Ron Blue Trust. And so I did some stuff for Ron. But when the lawsuit was over, I wanted to start my own company again. So I started another company called Global Access Learning. And what I did was I would access the finest speakers, economists, financiers, all over the world to go in and do executive education programs for companies like Coca-Cola and Johnson & Johnson, all these companies that you know about all over the world. And so I had a great opportunity to travel the world, South Africa, Europe, all over the place. It was great. But I got tired of traveling. I liked it a lot because, I'm ADD, right? I like getting, I just got my 4 million mile congratulations from Delta last week. So I got over 4 million miles on Delta. Makes me lifetime platinum, and I get another Toomey bag for that. Well, I reached that point. I'll never forget this time. One time I looked at my calendar, and the next 4 months were solid booked for educational programs all over the country and in Europe and South Africa. I mean, I'm making plenty of money, and I remember thinking, looking at it, not one of them was in Atlanta, Georgia. Not one. I mean, I was traveling all over the place. And so I really reached that point where some of you guys maybe want to get to at some point in time where the money, I was making money, but I wasn't enjoying any of it. I wasn't home. And I told you I'm a flaming extrovert. I love to hang out and eat DOS barbecue and drink beer with all you guys every day. But I was never in Atlanta to do it. And so I started getting these kids at our little church that we'd started to start praying for Uncle Steve to get some business in town, in Atlanta. I got 3 or 4 little kids. Remember, he said, except you become as a little child, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And so I got these kids together and said, "Would you pray that Uncle Steve has some business in town for money?" And it wasn't, I'm telling you, 6 weeks later that Emory University calls me up and says, "Hey, we want you to come and be our Associate Dean of Executive Education. You can bring your model, your global access learning model, to Emory." Thank you, Jesus. I got all those little kids together and said, guess what happened? So for the next 2 years, I was the Associate Dean of the Gazweta, Emory University Business School. Had a great time, taught mergers and acquisitions. I taught entrepreneurship and new venture management before I taught mergers and acquisitions and policy and strategy. Having a ball, having a great time. And one of my advisory council members had sold his company to Kodak for about $50 million. And he comes to me one day and says, "Hey, I want to buy a college and take it public." I said, "What are you talking about? You can't buy a college." I mean, I didn't know. I had never heard of the University of Phoenix. I thought all colleges and universities were not-for-profit. I had no idea there was such a thing as a for-profit college. And so he said, "Yeah." And so he said, "We're going to buy it. We're going to convert it to a university. I'm going to be the chairman and CEO. You're going to be the president and chief learning officer. All the campus presidents will report to you. We're going to build more campuses, and we're going to take it public." I went, game on. So at the end of 2 years at Emory, I left again. Everybody once again thought I was crazy. And we had a successful IPO. Fall of 1997. We were oversubscribed. Most fun 2 weeks of my entire business career. Man, we were jetted around, limoed around, the whole bit. It was fabulous. So we're rocking and rolling. Stock climbs to 28. Goal was to take it to 100, split for share, adjusted for splits, and then bail out. So in like 6 weeks, we're 28% of the way there. So we're rolling, coast on through the first 2 or 3 quarters, and then this wonderful, talented guy, I still love him, he has an affair with one of the employees on the Atlanta campus. He's married, his kindergarten sweetheart, been married for however many years. All 3 kids worked in the business. And back then, guys, you had an open affair. You got guys like the Strong Fund and all these big funds invest in you. You do that, you got what they call spanked. The market spanked you. And I'm the guy on the squawk box every 90 days with all the investors as the president, having to answer all the questions. And I remember it was the 13th of April, 1999. I was reading Proverbs 13:20. It says, "He who walks with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools will suffer." And this guy, for all of his talent and all of his incredible ability, was being foolish. And I said, his name was Steve too. I got another Steve in here. Just we're talking with Steve. A lot of Steves in here. I said, so we parted amicably in 1999. And I was going to go to South Africa to be a bush guide. I'd been to South Africa 2 or 3 times, and I decided I want to be a bush guide for a year. show everybody all the animals, all the elephants and the rhinos, and hippos, and all that kind of stuff. Told you I was ADD, and I thought it was going to be great. And but a good friend of mine, some of y'all know Leo Wells. I've known Leo since 1969. He came to me one day and said, hey, he said, I got this little company, I got about 30 people, I got about $200 million of assets under management. I just started a REIT. I didn't know what a REIT was, Real Estate Investment Trust, for those of you who aren't in that market. He said, I want you to come and help me grow it, and let's raise I think we can raise $1 billion, and let's do it. And I said, okay, because I got to thinking I'm going to be away a whole year in South Africa. As fun as it's going to be, I was going to be away from my kids and all that stuff, and all you friends I had here. So I said, okay, let's do that. We'll do that for a while, and then maybe I'll go to Africa. So I'm going to fast forward almost 13 years. We were very, very, very blessed by God. Brought some incredibly talented people there, and we raised about just under $13 billion. We did an office REIT for $5 billion, spun it off. It's now in the New York Stock Exchange. We did the second REIT, $6 billion, spun it off. It's now in the New York Exchange. Lost our butts on timber. Why we got in timber, don't ask me. But we did. But believe it or not, it's kind of been reconstituted, and it got spun off, and it's now in the New York Exchange. But it was a great 13 years in a lot of ways. Last year kind of sucked because we were losing money, and a lot of people from Wall Street now were bigger, smarter, had bigger, just tons of cash. And so January of 2013, Leo called me in his office and said, hey, I think we need to shut it down. I said, good idea. Because in the process, I had been collecting all the data for this book while I was going to all these financial conferences all around the country. So Andy Stanley had talked to me earlier, a couple of years earlier, and said, hey, I want you to come and do something for us. And I said, well, I can't right now, Andy. I said, I got all my wealth tied up in all these REITs and stuff. And so, but he said, we do a good job here at North Point helping out people who are in that struggling to surviving stage of life. Struggling is when, the expenses exceed the revenues. Some of y'all been there. I've been there. You raise your hand, been there. Surviving is kind of when it's kind of even. You're kind of breaking even. He said, and we've got a thing called Money-Wise Mentors, and we handle that, whatever. But we don't do anything for those who are moving into kind of that stable to surplus stage of life. I mean, where they get stable, they get out of struggling, surviving into stable, and those that get into surplus, and a lot of you guys are already in surplus, or you'll be in surplus someday. You say, we don't do anything for those people. And we do lots of different kinds of people. I'd like you to figure out a way to build some really unique environments to help people who are in that stable to surplus stage of life to really, really be excellent and be stellar at managing all of the financial and influence and talented resources he's entrusted to them. And I thought that would be a great, great, great thing. So that's what I do. I don't have a title. I work at North Point for Andy. I work with all the campus pastors. I work with staff, and I work mostly with people who are in all various stages of stable to surplus. We have big environments. We have little environments. I spent a lot of time at Das Barbecue. One week I ate Das Barbecue 7 days in a row. I did not want to eat barbecue for a month. I ate sushi for the next week and whatever. As many of you know, my son Stephen got started Das Barbecue, and if we have time for Q&A, I'll tell you about that. I am a certified barbecue judge people all over the country. That's another thing I've done. Written some articles on barbecue, and writing a book on barbecue, and we're going to do a film series on barbecue. So anyway, so it's been great being with Andy in North Point. Some of you probably go to North Point or one of our campuses. And in 2013, I think I told you, we published this book. It was a lot of fun. If you want to go to the website, it's called just the number 100, 100wisdom.com. Kind of a unique concept at the time. I got on a lot of TV. Fox and Friends had me on 2 mornings in a row. I got on Fox Business News. I got on ABC, CNN, NBC. Got on places around the country. It was a lot of fun. So you want to see Steve on TV, go to 100wisdom.com. I had a lot of fun. It was great. So I'm working on another book now on centenarian companies. But that's kind of what I'm doing now. And I still serve on a couple of boards, the American University in Dubai and Oxford University in England. I serve on those boards because those were things that came along my way during the way. Again, it's wonderful for an ADD person like that. It's Full Sail University down in Florida. Some of y'all know about Full Sail. They're fantastic. I serve on that board. I know the 3 owners very well, good friends of mine, great believers and all that. So in this last minute or two before we open it up for Q&A, I want to just share with y'all just 4 or 5 nuggets of wisdom that I've picked up along the way in my journey. Let me just start with this. One of the questions I asked these centenarians, I said, Tucker, where's Tucker? Where's Tucker? Okay, Tucker, where? I said, Tucker, if you had to live your life over again, what are some things you wish you had done more of? And almost everybody said these were the top two. They said, I wish I had read more, and I wish I had traveled more. And I could have, but I just didn't. I watched too much TV, or I just kind of piddle-diddle too much, or I played too much golf, or whatever. But I wish I'd learned more, and I wish I'd traveled more. And so I tell everybody that all of us in life are composite of three things: the books we read, the people we meet, and the places we go. So do as much of all three as you can. Read as many books as you can. You know, it's incredible. If you have not really spent time studying the Scriptures, shame on you. You're not being intellectually honest if you don't take time at least study the Scriptures, the Old Covenant, the New Covenant, how that means. You ought to read this book too, okay? But read lots of books. Meet as many people as you can, even if you're a flaming introvert. It doesn't matter. And go to as many places as you can like this, where you can learn and be filled up. That's nugget number one. Nugget number two. Develop, I'm sure you've had somebody talk about this. Develop a life purpose statement. Years ago, 30-some-odd years ago, Chris White, we were sitting at lunch one day, he said, what's your life purpose? I said, easy. Love God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love my neighbor as myself. He said, that's not your life purpose. That's everybody's life purpose that follows Jesus. He said, you need to develop a single sentence life purpose statement that you're passionate about that you can type on the back of a business card. Y'all don't remember typewriters, but back then we had typewriters. Y'all, I struggle because Zig Ziglar, my good buddy, said most people in life are wandering generalities and they need to become meaningful specifics. Guys, I don't want you to be wandering generality. You need to be a meaningful specific, and a life purpose statement will help you do that. I got mine on the back of a business card. I typed it and handed it out for years, but here's what it is. It's to disciple young men and encourage them to become godly, loving, and giving husbands, fathers, or friends. Disciple young men, teach them, influence them, and encourage them to become godly, loving, giving. Whatever that means to you, godly, loving, and giving. Husbands, fathers, or friends. You're going to be one or all three. That's my life purpose statement. I encourage you, in the next 30 days, if you don't do it, you won't do it. What's a single sentence life purpose statement that if somebody sat down and said to you, Nevin, wherever you are, what's your life purpose statement? You can say, it's this. Boom. One sentence. Meaningful, specific. Don't be a wandering generality, guys. But you don't do it in 30 days, you're not going to do it until the next purpose on tap. 3, this is I want you to consider, because this happened to me 38 years ago at Jubilate. Chick-fil-A used to hold something on New Year's Eve, kind of like Louis Giglio holds this big deal here every year now. What does he call it? Passion something? Passion on fire? Passion something? They had Jubilate, and they had 10 or 15,000 people in the Omni. And this guy, what was his name? I forgot his name. He was a sociologist. He said, I want you to think about this. Proverbs 11:11 says, through the blessing of the upright, a city will be exalted. Now, I'm going to look at Ben Haverty because I know Ben and his sons and his family. His family, this city is exalted to a great extent because of the Haverty family. Okay, because he's been upright and his family's been upright. Through the blessing of the upright, a city will be exalted. Look at Atlanta, y'all. Look at what's happening to our city. What's going on? I mean, it is hot Atlanta. It really is. So think about it. He said, think about committing yourself to a city. I thought about that, and my wife and I prayed about that. It's not for everybody. We said, we're going out of Atlanta in a pine box. And as long as I'm here, I'm going to try to be a blessing to this city so it will be exalted for you, your friends, your children, your grandchildren, whomever, until God slaps me or somebody slaps me in the face with a shovel. 4th, anybody here as a financial advisor is going to say, yay! My granddaddy once told me this. He said, son, if you don't go fishing every day, you better go with somebody who does, or you'll never catch many fish. If you don't have a financial advisor, when you get to the point that you have some money and you're in that stable surplus stage, you get you a financial advisor that fishes in that world every day and sets you a financial finish line as early in your life as you can, and then give away the rest. My wife and I did that about 20-something years ago. We decided what we wanted to live on an annualized basis, adjusted for 3% inflation, net after all taxes and whatever, and we got enough assets to handle that, and then we try to work hard at figuring out where all the rest goes. Okay? Set that financial finish line as early in your life as you can, because the sooner you set it, the more you're going to give away, and the more you're going to impact the kingdom, and the happier you're going to be at the end of your life. And last, and then I'll shut up and take the questions. Everybody in this room should attend an AA meeting and an Al-Anon meeting. And everybody should memorize the Serenity Prayer. Alcohol and drug addiction has been rampant throughout my family. I can't count how many AA meetings I've been to. My wife and I go to Al-Anon every Wednesday night that we're in town. Not every Wednesday night, a lot. The Al-Anon is just an AA for people who have loved ones who have addiction. And every meeting we start, at an AA or an Al-Anon meeting, we start it with this: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Reinhold Niebuhr penned that prayer back in 1951, American theologian. But that's everybody's prayer. God, grant me the wisdom to accept the things I cannot change, which, by the way, is most things. Courage to change the things I can, which, by the way, is about only me. And the wisdom to know the difference. Wisdom comes from what? Wisdom comes from God, I believe, through the books and the people and the places He takes you on your journey. So those are my 5 nuggets of wisdom. We got 11 minutes and 42 seconds. Love to answer any questions from any of you ADDs or non-ADDers. Happy to answer. Yeah.
I am a fellow ADDer.
Good. Welcome.
And I'm from the great barbecue state of North Carolina.
Woo! Good state.
So what's your favorite spot?
In North Carolina?
You've ever been to ever?
In my life, Josh Barbecue.
Okay.
Second would be Franklin's in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah. But I got a lot of them.
Me too.
Got a lot of them. Yes, sir.
I have a friend of mine, his name is Jeff Foxworthy.
Yes, sir.
He's currently discouraged because some of the individuals that he has poured his life into to support have made some bad choices and backslid in life.
Right.
I really want to support Jeff Foxworthy. What would you suggest as far as encouraging somebody who has influenced an individual who has made some bad choices?
Well, I think most people backslide because they're not in community. And Tucker and I have talked a lot about that. Clayton and I have talked a lot. Most guys, why do guys backslide, or anybody? Because they're not in community with people that are going to lovingly hold them accountable. And I don't, that'd be a good study to look at people who quote backslid. I know a lot of the people that are the type of people that Jeff works with. My guess is they got out there away from their community, away from their herd. I don't know if the herd's a good word there. And they got lone. Y'all, listen. God, I could preach an hour. We're in spiritual warfare, y'all. We're in spiritual warfare. If you believe there's God, I hope you believe there's Satan, because I do, and he's real, and he wants to destroy every one of your families. He wants to destroy you. And he'll do it through sex, pornography, drugs, alcohol, whatever. And you got to realize, this is warfare. And so when a person leaves the platoon and is out there as a lone ranger, it's a whole lot easier to take him out. So I would encourage Jeff in his work and I know he does a lot of work with Atlanta Mission, which I love Atlanta Mission, and we support Atlanta Mission big time from at North Point, is to encourage these guys. Before you get out, you need to know who at least are 2 or 3 people that you're going to meet with at least on a weekly basis to hold you accountable and pray with you and work with you and hang out and do whatever you need to do together. I think that's probably the biggest reason for backsliding. My dad never had anybody. He gets sober for a year, a month, and then he get back because nobody wanted to. They were too afraid of Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben, who can help Dr. Ben? And so he took his life at 52. I had some sweet years with my dad. When we got back together, he was tracking with Jesus and AA. But as I told you, my dad accepted Jesus as Savior, but he could not turn over the drugs and the addiction to the lordship of Jesus. And so all of you, to the extent that you turn everything over in your life, your money, your health, your time, your talent, your influence, to the extent you do that, will be the level of the abundance and fulfillment of your life. To the extent that you don't, you'll be saved and get into heaven. I'll be glad to see you. But you're not going to live as abundant a life here on this earth as you would like to, and He would like you to. So, Jesus is Savior, Jesus is Lord. He can be your Savior without being your Lord. And let me tell you, I'm 72 years of age. I didn't say 72 years old. My goal is to live to be 120. Moses lived to be 120. I'm going to start the Moses Club when I start to get to 120. Scripture says his eyes were brilliant at 120. Didn't need glasses. So, just all of you. And I commend you for coming, because in a sense you're in a big community here tonight. Good for you. A lot of crazy stuff you could be doing right now. You're in here listening to me and hear my story, for which I'm very honored and humbled and grateful. But get in community. Get in one or two other guys that you can spend time with that are going to be replenishers. You know, there's three kinds of people in your life. There's drainers, there's neutrals, and there's replenishers. There are people that you get around, the thought of being with them drains you. While you're with them, they're drained. After you've been with them, you're drained. The thought of getting with them again drains you. There's neutrals. Neutrals. You know, it's okay. It's like kissing your sister. It's no big deal, right? Neutral. Neutral. And then there's those replenishers. And this guy that said this, he said, if you don't intentionally manage encouragers into your life, you will dry up as a leader. And I think that's what I would say. Manage encouragers, manage replenishers into your life in small groups, in community. And that's how you survive leadership. And every one of you guys are leaders. Every one of you have a sphere of influence. If I sat down with every one of you, I guarantee you probably got a bigger sphere of influence than you have any idea that you've got. But if you want to survive as a leader, you've got to intentionally manage replenishers into your life. Because you got plenty of neutrals and plenty of negative, of drainers. Yes, sir. Another one. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right here.
So in your course of life, in the broad menu of opportunities that you had, what are some of the key ways that you made the decisions to pursue the specific path that you did along your journey?
When I got bored. Now, twice I had to. When we shut down the company in '75, we went out of business. I had to go. And then another time I had to go. When did I get fired one more time? I can't remember. But the others were, to me, boring. Here's what I tell people. Every job has some mundane days. I have occasional mundane days even at North Point. But I tell people this. If you start getting up in the morning for a day or two or a week or two and say, God, I'm just not excited about what I'm doing. I don't think I want to go work. That's okay, a week or two. If it goes on for 3 or 4 more weeks, you need to start seriously praying and asking yourself, is this where God has invited me to join Him? You ought to read a book by Henry Blackaby called Experiencing God. He says, most people say, okay, I'm going to do this. God, will you help me? God, I really want to do this. Would you help me do this? Help me figure this out? No. He said, what your job is to do this. Say, God, you're at work everywhere. Where are you inviting me to join you next? Where are you inviting me? So you got to get quiet. That's tough for an extrovert. Tough for an ADD person, right? Tough to get quiet and still and saying, God, speak to me. Where are you inviting me to join you next? I'm bored. I hate what I'm doing. And I used to tell my business students this, trust me, guys, in a $12+ trillion economy, you can find something that you love doing. God is calling you somewhere where He wants you to love what you're doing. But you got to sometimes get real quiet and real still for a while to hear where He's inviting you to join Him. So my major thing was boredom. I loved what I did at Emory, but I'd been teaching and reading and writing for 9 years, 3 years at OCC and in school, 6 years at Emory, 9 years. I love students. I love teaching. I was bored. I needed something new to do. So that's kind of been my driver. Am I really loving and waking up most days knowing I'm going to really give it my best to the entity that I'm affiliated with? And if I'm not, I need to get out of here. I need to move. That was my major barometer. Somebody else over? Experiencing God by Henry Blackaby. Experiencing God by Henry Blackaby. Changed my prayer life. Changed my prayer life. Great one. Yes, sir.
So for those of us that are in business running companies, starting companies. You talked about a business partner that had an affair. What do you see as the right balance in having business partners that may or may not be believers as far as where you stand as a Christian versus where you are basically called to succeed and to move forward?
Yeah. That requires a long answer. I'm going to give you a quick example. I know about the thing about being unequally yoked. I'm not sure that means all your business partners have to be Christians. Buddy of mine, new Christian, gung-ho, used to be at MCI. Y'all remember MCI? Remember when it started his own business? Calls me up one day. His name was John. He says, Steve, I'm interviewing for the CFO. Got this great guy. He said, but he's Jewish. He's Jewish. What do you think? And I said, John, Jesus was Jewish. Silence. I got it. And he hired him. And he gave him equity in the firm. So I just think that takes a lot of prayer and it takes a lot of counseling. That's why you need some older brothers and sisters to be sounding boards, to spend time with. Say, hey, I'm dealing with this. I mean, I got a non-black, I got two. There's no simple answer to your question other than I don't believe you have to have all Christian believers in a business. But because what does that give you the opportunity? It gives you the opportunity to be salt and light and love and truth and Jesus to them. How else are they going to hear than to see their partner act in total integrity and total honesty and total truthfulness in the way that Jesus would? My prayer today, these guys, is, Lord, help me be like Jesus. Nobody argues about Jesus. I was in India. They say, you Christian? I say, no, I'm not a Christian. Not? No. If I say I'm a Christian, they'd say, are you Hindu? You Buddhist? I say, no, but I'm a Jesus follower. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So you have an opportunity, I think, in business always for you to be Jesus in whatever role you have and to influence your partners or to-be partners if they're not followers. But just because, how many nightmare stories have we heard of people that had Christian partners and the partners screwed the wazoo out of them? You know, so I look for competence first, character second, and then they're Christian, great. I don't care. But so let's talk more about that. Too long an answer. I'll talk with you afterwards. Yes, sir.
So kind of two-part questions. One, making money isn't a bad thing.
It's good things.
Yeah, a lot of us are probably attracted to that. So maybe some advice around being in your 30s, kind of going after that race and that chase of financial security and money. If you have some advice on how to balance that and do it in a healthy manner.
Right.
And kind of the second part with that, to be, you've had success, and did you see any trade-offs in your personal, professional, family relationships, friendships, where as you were chasing success, you maybe saw negative?
Yep. Remind me of the second one because I'll forget it because I'm ADD. Let me address the first one. If you have the gift of making money, you ought to make all the money in the world you can. Set a financial finish line and give away all you can. Okay? Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar was kind of the Tony Robbins of some of us older guys today, right? He said, you know something, Steve? People who tell you they don't care about making more money will lie about other things. Now, if you have the gift of making money, and some people do, they have the gift of making money, then they should do that and make as much as they can, set a finish line, and give away all they can. It's good to make money. You can do lots of good things with money. It's great, and it'd Be Rich every year. I think we'll probably raise $6-7 million this year at Be Rich, which is our once a year annual thing. We're able to support a lot of neat ministries that could not help the helpless if we weren't big and could raise a lot of money. So I like being big. The challenge of a big church is staying small, right? So I say it's fine to make money. Andy just did this incredible series. It's What If Your Money Could Talk? Money, but don't let money define you. You let it be a tool. But if you got the gift of making money, you make as much of it as you can. You give first, save second, live on the rest. You give first, save second, live on the rest. You give first, save second, live on the rest. You make giving a priority, you make it a percentage, you make it progressive. That's not my words, that's Andy Stanley's words, okay? He stole it from Jesus probably, so he's a plagiarist too, okay? Okay. Second part, yes, I travel too much. If I had it to do over again, I would not have traveled as much as I did, and it harmed my relationship with Stephen, my son. Stephen has his story. I won't tell you for it, but if he was here, he could share it with you, and he's had his struggles. And me being gone a lot during his junior high and up to his senior high school years damaged our relationship. And if I had it to do over again, I would not do it. I would not do it. But I was making a lot of money. And I bought the lie. Well, it's not the amount of time, it's the quality of time when I'm with you, and that's just BS. So I would say you, and if you're married, your spouse, and you have children or don't, even if it's just with you and your spouse, you all need to prayerfully on your knees before the Lord saying, Father, what is the right amount of travel in my work, and how many nights a week or month or year is okay for us to not be together? Okay? I mean, you got to be specific about that. You kind of, you got to be specific about that. And my wife and I worked through that. And like I say, I made that mistake. I think I traveled too much. Now, my son and I have the greatest relationship we've ever had now, but there was a period of time there that it was really a broken relationship. And a lot of it was because I wasn't there at the soccer games and the stuff that he was involved in junior and senior high that I should have been. So I think you got to really balance that. You got to spend a lot of time. You got to ask God, hey, God, you've called me to this work. It involves travel. How much travel are you calling me to, God? Tell me that. Tell me that. Let me know. Best I can do. That answer the question? Yeah. I get it? Yes, sir.
Did your giving change from when you first started making money those first years throughout your life as you continue to grow your wealth?
Yeah. Yeah, I never in my life until 1974 heard a guy named Larry Burkett. Listen, man, back in '74, guys, you could get a Sears Roebuck card, a Riches card, a Bank of America card, and you could use one to pay off the other, pay off the other, pay off the other. I had 14,000. I had the equivalent today, 5 years into marriage, of $40,000 of credit card debt. But I was rolling it. I was good at it. I know how to roll it. Take that Sears card, pay off that Riches card, pay that Riches card, pay off my Bank of America card, swip it back around to MasterCard. All that. It was great. I was good at it. And then this guy, he goes, he said, Larry Burkett, some of you know him, he said, we don't own our money. God owns our money. We're stewards, we're managers. We're not owners. You should give first, save second, live. I mean, it changed my. So in 1974, and remember I went broke in 75, sold our house, and in selling that house I've been in for 9 months, I was able to pay off all my credit card debt, and all I had left was mortgage debt. And I moved into it, and my income dropped 70% from 1976 from 1975. Dropped 70% moving out to Oklahoma. I had a lot of onion rings. And once I learned that we're stewards and managers of God's money, whatever, I don't have time to get in. 10%, that's old covenant stuff. 10% is the starting point, in my opinion. But when I got with a financial advisor, Ron Blue, I was his 19th client in 1970-something, I forget now. And he's the one that helped us develop our financial plan, develop 16 life goals, all of which have been fulfilled except number 16. That's the orderly disposition of my estate, which I hope is 48 years from now. Okay? And so that training and studying Scripture and reading books and learning from Ron, and later Larry Burkett, then Ron Blue, and Howard Dayton. Some of you have done the Crown Ministries. If you haven't, you ought to. That has all shaped my giving. So once I learned that and we set that financial finish line and then began building our net worth to accomplish that. But giving also along the way, it's not like, I'm not going to give for the next 10 years, build up my net worth, then I'll live off my net worth, then get, It's both and, not either or, it's both and. So I don't know if that answered the question, but so once we did that and we got to that, then we continue to give. We give systematically. I don't mean legalistically, I mean regularly, because money is one of God's currencies He has to have to fund ministries like this one. You guys ought to give some money to this ministry. If you like this ministry, if you like what they're doing here, Purpose on Tap, you need to write some checks. Okay, you need to write some checks so they can keep doing it. Okay? Yeah. And they didn't ask me to do that, by the way. They didn't say that. But come on. Hey, like politics, we probably got Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians in here. If you don't like politics, but you're not writing any checks, if you haven't written a check more than $100, $200, $200, $300, $400, I don't know what you're making, then shut up. You don't have any say in the game. But you start writing some checks to some of these people, you'd be amazed how much they call you, they invite you to stuff, you get invited. But I'm just saying, you got to put some skin in the game. Long answer to your question, I probably didn't answer it. That's how it shaped it. It shaped it to where you give first, you save second, you live on the rest. You give percentage, most people, as they get wealthier, they give a smaller percentage of their money. You know why? Because they look at the gross amount. Literally. It's just great. I had a guy call me one day at North Point. I invited these people who they were the most, I said, you're one of the top donors at North Point. He said, how do you know I'm a top donor? By the way, you would know this guy's company. You would know him probably. He makes millions of dollars a year. He said, how do you know that I'm one of the most generous people at this church? He said, I could be giving 1% of my annual income, and somebody else could be giving 20% of theirs, but my 1% is more than their 20% gross. I said, you're right, Charlie. His name's not Charlie. I said, you're right. I said, I don't know. I'm not getting into percentages. So the first thing I like to ask, though, Charlie, is this. For you to give 20% of your annual income. And he goes, touche. Yeah. So, so there's all the ways. But you get it. It should be a percentage that you're comfortable with. You pray with before the Lord, and it should be progressive if you can. And it should be priority. Not the table scraps at the end of the day. Okay, so that's kind of how my giving's been shaped. And no, it hasn't changed. I mean, once I got it, principles haven't changed. Principles have been stayed the same up till now. I'm 72, and I'm not really working and making a lot of money anymore. I'm living off of my investments primarily. Other questions? Yeah, last question. Yes, sir.
Well, you mentioned mentoring as a life purpose. Was there an experience or an influence yourself that helped you get better at that?
In my life purpose statement? At developing it?
Not developing the purpose statement, the mentoring young men.
Yeah. Well, as a college professor, I was around a lot of young people all the time. I thought that was a natural field for me to be in, to be able to do that. And then I just enjoy, and by the way, the older you get, all of you are younger men to me. But that just was kind of what drove me. I mean, I felt like, well, how do you multiply? If you can disciple younger men and have them disciple younger men and have the algorithm build to help them become godly, loving, and giving, they're going to be a husband, father, or friend. That just is what turned me on. That's what excited me. And so my wife would tell you, if I'm doing something, I got something planned, and a young guy calls me today and really needs to see me, she knows it's okay to change everything else we got going. It's an anchor in the ground that drives my behavior. It'll drive my responsiveness. It'll drive my serendipity. It'll drive my schedule. Does that answer the question?
Yes, you're matching up the
Yeah. It becomes a rudder. It becomes a rudder for how you do life. But guys, I'm telling you, if I were to call you up and say, hey, let's have lunch, I'll buy at Doss Barbecue a month from now, and I sat down and say, hey, what's your life purpose statement? And you can't state it in a sentence, you haven't got one. So you know what you are? You're a lovable, wonderful, maybe you're a strong believer, but you're a wandering generality. You're a wandering generality, and I would challenge you to become a meaningful specific. God, grant me the wisdom to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And I hope just a few of the things I've shared with you tonight will help you fulfill that prayer. Thank you, Tucker and Clayton, for having us today.